Some of you walked into this room carrying battles nobody can see, smiling in public but breaking in private. But hear me today, you are not losing. You are just carrying what was never meant to be yours. And God sent me here to tell you, relax, because the problem is small, but because your God is bigger. Ladies and gentlemen, sons and daughters of destiny, lean in. Because today, we are stepping out of stress and stepping into surrender. We are stepping out of panic and stepping into purpose. We are stepping out of what drains us, stepping into the hands of the one who sustains us. Challenge you to love enough. You've been wrestling with things that keep you up at night, fighting storms that should have never been your assignment. I came to declare a word over your life. Relax. Oh, you can. Yeah, yes, you tried. Yes, you pushed. Yes. You did everything you knew how to do. But there comes a moment when strength is not enough, a moment when strategy is not enough, a moment when your own hands can't hold the weight anymore. And that right there is where God steps in. If you can handle it, he'll stand back. When you hit the wall, when you reach the end, when you fall to your knees and say, God, I can't do this by myself. He leans in and says, finally, now let me show you what I can do. So today, get ready. Because what has been stressing you, God is already fixing. What has been fighting you, God is already defeating. What has been worrying you, God is already working out. Somebody shout, relax, because God is handling what you can't. You were not designed to carry everything alone. Some battles belong to God, not you. You must understand this deeply, not as a religious phrase, not as something you've heard growing up, as a revelation that sinks into the bones of your existence. Because many of us are exhausted, not from what life gave us, but from what we insisted on carrying ourselves. We walk around with weights we were never built to lift, responsibilities we were never meant to shoulder, expectations that were never assigned to us by heaven. There is a reason your spirit gets tired in ways sleep cannot fix. There is a reason your heart gets heavy even when nothing seems physically wrong. There is a reason you feel stretched, strained, pulled in directions no human being can sustain. Because nobody can fulfill divine responsibilities with human strength alone. You were made with limits for a reason. Your body has limits. Your mind has limits. Your emotions have limits. God intentionally designed you with those limits so that you would know how to lean, how to surrender, how to depend, and how to trust. The problem is, we live in a world that glorifies independence. I've got it. I can handle it. I don't need help. I'll figure it out. And you've been applauded for carrying things by yourself. People call you strong. They call you resilient. They call you the rock of the family. But inside, you're cracking. Inside, you're pushing past breaking points. Inside, you are drowning in expectations you were never meant to meet alone. Some of the pressure you feel isn't life. It's misassignment. You picked up a battle that should have stayed in God's hands. You picked up a burden that heaven never told you to carry. You picked up the weight of outcomes that only God can control. And here's the truth many people don't want to face. Strength is not shown by how much you carry. Strength is shown by knowing what to let go of. Of course, life will always present you with things that are bigger than your understanding, heavier than your capacity, beyond your strategy. That is not failure. That is design. Because if everything were within your control, you would forget the one who gave you breath. If everything were within your reach, you would never seek his hand. If everything were manageable, you would never discover his miraculous power. Some battles don't belong to you because they require strength you don't have, timing you cannot control, and outcomes you could never produce. Some battles belong to God because only he sees the full picture. Only he knows the unseen danger. Only he understands the spiritual warfare around you. Only he knows who is plotting, who is pretending, who is draining you behind the scenes. You see the surface, but God sees the source. You see the moment, God sees the lifetime. This is why surrender is not weakness. Surrender is wisdom. It is the wisdom of knowing when to stop fighting in your own power and start standing in his. It is the wisdom to say, God, this is bigger than me. You take it, you lead it, you handle it. You are not abandoning your responsibility. You are abandoning the illusion that you were ever in control of everything. You are not giving up. You are giving over. You are not stepping back in fear. You are stepping aside so God can step forward. Some of you have been battling with things for years, worrying about your children, your marriage, your finances, your future, your identity, your purpose. You've been wrestling alone in silence, trying to be strong for everyone else while dying inside. Hear this with your spirit. God never told you to be the savior of anything. You are not the healer. He is. You are not the provider. He is. You are not the protector. He is. You are not the one holding the universe together. He is. You were created to partner with God, not replace Him. There is a peace that enters your life when you finally put the responsibility back where it belongs. When you release the fear of what if, the pressure of how, and the weight of when. There is a rest that fills your soul when you stop trying to be the architect of your own destiny and allow God to build what only He can build. Some battles are not won by fighting harder. They are won by surrendering sooner. Some victories come not when you push more, but when you release more. When you stop striving, when you stop stressing, when you stop panicking about outcomes that only God can control. You were never meant to live life clenched, fists tight, heart tight, mind tight. You were designed to live open, open-handed, open-hearted, open to the flow of God's strength replacing your own. You were not designed to carry everything alone, and you don't have to. Some battles belong to God. Let Him fight them. Let Him take the weight. Let Him handle what you cannot. Your only job is to trust Him enough to let go. Your anxiety is often a sign you're trying to control what only God can change. Anxiety doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It is not random. It is not senseless. Anxiety is often the alarm system of the soul ringing loudly because something deep within you is trying to manage the unmanageable. Anxiety rises when you place yourself in the role of God, when you try to control timing, outcomes, people, situations, and seasons that are beyond human influence. You begin to feel pressure in your chest, weight in your spirit, and tension in your mind, not because you're weak, because you're carrying responsibilities that were never designed to sit on your shoulders. Many people think anxiety is a problem of the mind alone. Often it is a problem of misplaced responsibility. You worry the most about the things you can influence the least. You stress the hardest about the outcomes you cannot determine. You become restless over things that are happening behind the scenes, places where only God can see, only God can move, only God can shift. When you try to reach into realms that are not yours, your soul responds with anxiety. It's saying, this is not your job. This is not your battle. This is not your assignment. Anxiety is many times the proof that you are operating outside your grace. God gives grace for what He has called you to do, not for what you've decided to take on by yourself. He gives peace for what is yours. He gives discomfort when you begin to pick up what belongs to Him. When you try to manipulate a situation, when you try to force a door open, when you try to rush the timing of something that God has ordained for later, anxiety becomes the internal signal that you are stepping out of alignment. You were not created to be in control of everything. Human beings were not formed with that capacity. You were created to trust, to depend, to listen, to follow. Anxiety often shows up when trust has been replaced with self-dependence. When instead of saying, God will handle this, you say, I've got to fix this right now. When instead of resting, you rehearse every scenario in your mind, planning outcomes, imagining failures, preparing for disasters that may never even happen. Anxiety is the side effect of trying to predict what only God knows. You worry because you assume the worst. You fear because you imagine the impossible. You panic because you try to prepare for problems that haven't even occurred. And all the while, God is whispering, be still. This is not yours to manage. Your anxiety rises when you confuse concern with control. Concern is human, control is divine. Concern is caring. Control is claiming ownership of outcomes. You have permission to care. You do not have the power to control. Some of the anxiety you're battling is rooted in the belief that if you are not in control, something will fall apart. Somewhere inside, you have convinced yourself that if you stop worrying, things will get worse, as if your worry is holding the universe together. Worry has never fixed anything. Anxiety has never solved a problem. Stress has never opened a door. Your thinking has never shifted destiny. Some things are simply outside your reach because they are inside God's domain. Anxiety is strongest where trust is weakest. The more you try to grab hold of something God hasn't given you authority over, the heavier it becomes. The more you try to fix what only God can transform, the more overwhelmed you feel. The more you try to control people, their decisions, their growth, their behavior, the more anxious you become because the heart of a human being is in God's hands, not yours. Your anxiety is telling you something. It is revealing the very places where God is asking you to release. Release the fear. Release the timeline. Release the desire to have all the answers. Release the pressure to be perfect. Release the outcome. Release the idea that you must do everything, know everything, and solve everything. You were never asked to do that. You were asked to trust. Trust is not passive. Trust is powerful. It is the conscious decision to put what you cannot control into the hands of the one who can do all things. It is the spiritual discipline of surrender, letting go of the illusion of control and letting God take his rightful place. Anxiety decreases not when life gets easier, but when trust gets stronger. When you begin to say, God, I don't know how this will work out, but I trust you. I don't know when you will move, but I trust your timing. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I trust that you are already in it. Anxiety loses its grip when faith takes its place. Faith says, I don't need to control this because God already does. Faith says, I don't need to understand everything to believe that God is working. Faith says, I may feel pressure, but God is carrying the weight. Your anxiety is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are human. It is an invitation to shift your posture from striving to surrendering, from gripping tightly to releasing freely, from controlling outcomes to trusting God's sovereignty. When you stop trying to control what only God can change, peace will return to your mind, rest will return to your soul, and calm will settle into your spirit. Because where trust lives, anxiety dies. When your strength ends, God's strength begins. There is a point every human being reaches, no matter how talented, gifted, disciplined, or resilient you are, a point where your energy dries up. Your ideas stop flowing, your plans fall apart, and your confidence feels like it's dissolving. A point where your best is no longer enough. And for many people, that moment feels like failure. It feels like weakness. It feels like defeat. But in truth, it is one of the most sacred and transformative places you can ever stand, because it is exactly where God steps in. Human strength has limits. That's not shameful. It's intentional. You were designed to reach the end of yourself so you could discover the beginning of God. If you never ran out of strength, you would never seek his. If you never hit the wall, you would never look beyond it. If you never grew tired, you would never learn dependence. God allows you to experience exhaustion, not to break you, but to reposition you. He lets you come to the end of your abilities so that you will finally rely on his. Many people fight against this moment as if it's a setback, but it's actually a turning point. When you reach the end of your strength, you reach the doorway to God's supernatural strength. His strength is not an addition to your own. It's a replacement for it. He doesn't simply make you a little stronger. He becomes your strength. He becomes your energy when you are drained, your focus when you are confused, your courage when you are afraid, and your foundation when everything around you feels unstable. But here's the challenge for many. We don't like reaching the end. We don't like feeling weak, limited, or vulnerable. We pride ourselves on being self-sufficient. We have been taught to push harder, hustle more, grind endlessly. Never let anyone see us struggle. But what if the struggle is the very place God wants to meet you? If the ending of your strength is the beginning of his miracle? Some situations are engineered to outmatch your abilities. Not because God wants to see you fail, but because those situations require his hand, not yours. There are battles where human effort cannot win, decisions where human wisdom cannot guide, and seasons where human endurance cannot sustain. You reach the end because God is preparing to take you beyond what you could accomplish alone. When you come to the place where your strength ends, your prayers change. You stop praying from pride and start praying from surrender. You stop asking for small things and begin asking for divine intervention. You stop depending on strategy and start depending on presence. And that shift is what opens the door to God's power. It's easy to trust God when everything is smooth. It's easy to believe when you feel strong, capable, and in control. True faith is discovered in weakness. True trust is found in the moments when you run out of options. God's strength is not for the arrogant. It's for the available. It flows best through people who admit their limits and invite Him into the places that hurt. Your weakness does not disqualify you, it positions you. God is not disappointed when you grow tired. He is not frustrated when you cry, overwhelmed by the weight of your responsibilities. He is not angry when you say, God, I can't do this anymore. In fact, that honesty unlocks His help. Your breaking point is His entry point. When your strength ends, God's strength shows up in ways you didn't expect. Suddenly you find peace where panic used to live. Suddenly you find hope rising in places where despair had settled. Suddenly you find clarity in situations that once confused you. Suddenly you find resilience you didn't know was possible. This is not your strength returning. It's His strength replacing yours, and His strength is different. Human strength fluctuates with emotions, circumstances, unpredictability of life. God's strength is constant. It doesn't rise with good days and fall with bad ones. It doesn't depend on your mood, your bank account, your health, or your environment. His strength stands when everything else falls. But you only experience this when you stop pretending that you're limitless, when you stop acting like you can carry everything on your own shoulders, when you stop hiding your fatigue behind a smile, when you stop pushing past your breaking point just to maintain the image of being strong. There is a holy dignity in saying, God, I need you. There is a sacred power in admitting, God cannot do this without you. There is a breakthrough hidden in the confession, God, my strength has ended, but yours is beginning. No human life is designed to be self-sustaining. You are wired to require divine strength. You were never meant to live solely on your own power. You were created to be a vessel. Something God pours into, carries, lifts, strengthens, and empowers. Your emptiness is not the end of your story. It's the moment God fills you. Think of how many problems would crush you if God didn't step in. Think of how many battles you would lose if His strength didn't undergird you. Think of how many storms would drown you if His hand didn't lift you. You are still standing not because your strength was enough, but because His strength took over. So the next time you feel drained, exhausted, overwhelmed, or empty, don't panic. Don't assume you're losing. Don't assume something is wrong. You may simply be standing at the threshold of a divine takeover. When your strength ends, God's strength begins, and what He can do through you is infinitely greater than what you could ever do alone. Letting go is not giving up. It's giving God room to move. Most people confuse letting go with quitting. They think that releasing something means you've stopped caring or stopped believing or stopped trying. But letting go isn't abandoning the situation. It's abandoning the illusion that you can fix everything by yourself. Letting go is the moment you step out of God's way so He can do what only He can do. It is the spiritual act of making space for the supernatural. We often hold on to things so tightly because we fear what will happen if we loosen our grip. We think, if I stop worrying about this, it will get worse. If I don't stay on top of this, it will fall apart. If I'm not constantly thinking, planning, controlling, and micromanaging, everything will slip through my fingers. And so we cling, we tighten our grip, we push harder, and yet, ironically, our anxiety grows, our peace shrinks, nothing improves. Holding on doesn't always keep things together. Sometimes it makes them worse. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care enough to trust God with what your hands cannot hold. It is understanding the difference between what is your responsibility and what is God's territory. Your responsibility is obedience. God's responsibility is outcome. Your job is to plant and water. God's job is to bring the increase. You are called to act. He is called to fulfill. When you confuse those roles, you live exhausted, frustrated, and overwhelmed. But when you step back and return the responsibility to God, rest comes, clarity comes, and peace begins to flow again. One of the biggest obstacles to letting go is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the future, fear of what might happen if you release your grip. Fear convinces you that letting go will lead to disaster. Fear whispers, if you don't handle this, no one will. But fear is a liar. Letting go is actually the moment you move from fear to faith. It is the bold declaration that God is wiser than you, stronger than you, and more capable than